Get started. Since we're 2 minutes behind schedule already. My name is Erin Erkins with the Boise Metro Chamber. Thank you all for being here. I oversee our leadership development. Louder? I oversee the leadership development programs at the Boise Metro Chamber. I know a lot of you are familiar with Boise Young Professionals, but I see some new faces, so I just wanted to give a quick overview. BYP is a program of the Chamber, and we are dedicated to develop and retain a talented workforce in the Boise Valley by connecting and empowering and engaging young professionals. Programs like tonight is organized by young professionals for young professionals. And before we get started, I just wanted to thank a couple organizations and a few individuals. First, to all the candidates for being here. I know you all are super busy, as I think we're 2 weeks out from Election Day, so thank you for being here. And then I'd like to thank our community engagement work team. They are the ones that put this 3-week series on. We started with a local government 101. We had a city council forum last week, and tonight's mayoral forum. We couldn't do everything we do without the support of our sponsors: Albertsons, Boise State Alumni Association, Balsam Brands, Idaho Central Credit Union, Dutch Bros, and our media sponsor, Idaho Statesman, who is also moderating tonight's event. Lastly, I want to thank tonight's sponsor, Micron, Trailhead, and last week, Valiant Productions provided AV. And now I'd like to introduce T.M. Rostigar. He's the Executive Director of Trailhead, and he's going to do a quick overview of what Trailhead is.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Trailhead. As Erin said, my name is T.M. Rostigar. I am the co-chair at Boise Startup Week, and for my day job, I'm the Executive Director here at Trailhead. By show of hands, how many of you participated in one way or another for Boise Startup Week? Okay, it was a free event. Was hoping to see a few more hands, but we'll do it again next year. And so, Trailhead is your friendly neighborhood startup incubator. We are a nonprofit, and we were launched by the city about 5 years ago with partnership of a handful of individuals as well as some corporate partners. We serve over 290 members at 2 locations. This is our base camp location. We also operate out of Trailhead North, just above Bodo Vino. We provide entrepreneurs with opportunities to find mentors, educational programming, experiential learning, and we're very active in ecosystem building. And to give you an idea of the work that we do, over the last 18 months, we helped launch 7 new startups. We helped create 29 full-time jobs. Our members have collectively raised over $40 million in investments and have generated collectively over $30 million in revenue. And having been born out of the city and the support of the city of Boise, I am very excited to be the host for tonight's forum. And that said, I will introduce our facilitator for tonight. Scott McIntosh is the Statesman opinion page editor and editorial writer. He's been an Idaho journalist for 13 years and covers the Treasure Valley's most pressing issues. Thank you, Scott, for joining us tonight.
All right, well, thank you all for being here. Welcome to tonight's forum for candidates running for Boise Mayor. Let me start by introducing the candidates. Rebecca Arnold, incumbent Mayor Dave Bieter, Brent Coles, Lauren McLean, Courtney Nielsen, and Wayne Richey. Tonight's forum is being presented by the Idaho Statesman and Boise Young Professionals of the Boise Metro Chamber of Commerce. The format for tonight will include 1-minute opening statements from each candidate, and then the candidates will be asked a series of questions on a rotating basis. Each candidate will be given 1 minute to answer each question. Keeping time tonight will be Bree Brush of Boise Young Professionals. She will be holding up a sign when you have 10 seconds remaining, and then another sign when time has expired. So please keep an eye on Bree, and please be respectful of the time limits so that we are fair to all candidates. We will have a lightning round in the forum, and candidates will have 10 seconds to answer those lightning round questions, so you'll have to be brief. And then we will end with 1-minute closing statements. So we will begin with opening statements, and we'll start on the left and go left to right, and we'll start with Rebecca Arnold. You have 1 minute for an opening statement.
Is this on? Okay, perfect. I'm Rebecca Arnold, and I want to change the way we're doing business at City Hall. We have far too many people who feel like they're being left out and not heard. We also have people who are being taxed out of their homes. They can't afford to stay there because they can't afford the property tax bill. So that tells me we need a change in direction. I have the skill set, I think, to move Boise forward. I'm a practicing attorney, a former CPA. I have a master's degree in business administration. So I have the skills to understand a budget, how it's put together, and how to take one apart and figure out what's not going well with the budget. So I'm asking for your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Dave Bieter, 1 minute.
Well, it's great to be here tonight. Thank you to BYP. It's been great relationship over the years. We meet several times throughout the year, and Trailhead is one of our great examples of how we work with the private sector to really move jobs forward. You know, it's been the honor of my professional life to be the mayor of my hometown, and I treat it like an honor every day, and we've had such great success. We have 15 new parks all across the city, 4 neighborhood libraries where we didn't have a single one. Just a couple weeks ago, we dedicated our 10th rec center in both school districts, both Boise and West Ada. And we're a safe city. We're one of the safest cities in America. Crime went down 17% just since last year, and 45% since I came into office. You know, but there's more to do. Affordable housing for young people like you is a big issue. Transportation with all of its modes, walkable, bikeable, and transit as well. And to remain and be a kind city. That's why I want to run again.
Brent Coles, 1 minute.
Thank you. One of the things I've enjoyed about the campaign is it gives us an opportunity to talk about ideas and priorities and the opportunity to continue to be one of the most livable cities in America. It's a great place to live. And so some of the things I've thought about is, what are our priorities? Do we spend $100 million on a library, or do we reduce taxes so struggling homeowners can continue to stay in their homes? Do we spend $11 million on an architect, or do we hire the 54 police officers that we're short? So you have priorities, you have ideas, and all of them are good, but they're competing. We only have so much in property taxes to spend. So finally, transportation. Traffic congestion has been it's so difficult in our community today to get around. So focusing on the opportunity to have a mass transit system that you and I can ride, it gets us to downtown and to our homes quickly and easily and comfortably. Thank you.
Lauren McLean, 1 minute.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren McLean. Thanks so much for coming tonight, and thanks for hosting. Like many of us, Boise's not my hometown, but right out of college, my husband and I were lucky enough to find this place, to move here with jobs in the tech sector, and for me to go to the university. And we built a life. We found jobs that would pay us what we needed to live here, in neighborhoods that we loved, found opportunity when we needed it, and have built an incredible life here. And so many people now really have benefited from the changes and the legacy of the last 16 years, but don't necessarily have the same opportunities that we had and that we want our kids and grandkids to have. And I believe that to tackle those things, because we're at a crossroads, we have to have a new leadership and a new generation of leadership that brings a sense of urgency, a willingness to innovate, and the energy necessary to tackle these new challenges from a growing city. So I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight and hope to earn your vote in the course of it.
Courtney Nielsen, 1 minute.
I'm Courtney Nielsen, and I am a candidate for mayor for the city of Boise. As a long-life resident of Boise, I am committed to transparency between government and its citizens. Transportation is in desperate need of a commuter train in and out of Boise on the already available railroad. Wages. It's time for a wage increase in Boise to empower people with higher wages so that they can afford their own home and to live and work in Boise. We all want to help Mother Earth. I'm advocating for a statewide emissions test to clean our air and pool the money together to take care of our roads and highways. As mayor of Boise, I see the next 4 years as an exciting time for empowerment, collaboration, inclusion, opportunity, and optimism. Thank you.
Wayne Richey, 1 minute.
Thank you for inviting me. I've never been here before. This place is pretty cool. I watched the Meridian Mayor Forum that they had last week, and everybody just continually whined about traffic. Why can't ACH do this? Why can't ACH do this? Well, ACHD didn't invite 20,000 people to our valley last year. And the year before that, we've had 11% growth every year for the past few years. We just can't keep up with that. And everything we talk about tonight is going to revolve around that one issue, that the growth is completely out of control. And that's what we need to address. Everything else is just a Band-Aid. So if the same amount of people move in next year as what moved in this last summer, apartments are going to go up to $1,500 a month. Homeless is going to get worse. I-84 is going to become a 9-mile parking lot. We need to fix that now.
Time.
Thank you.
All right, if you could pass the mic down. We'll start with our first question. We'll start with Rebecca Arnold. If elected, what are your top 3 priorities when setting the city's budget? You have 1 minute.
Would you repeat that? The top 3 priorities for setting the budget?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I think we need to take a very hard look at the budget and figure out where we can cut some things. These vanity projects that are being proposed, the $104 million library, the stadium in downtown Boise, the streetcar that just won't die, those are projects that we don't need and can't afford. So we need to take a hard look at that. We need to pay attention to the basics. Public safety. We're down police officers. We need more officers in the valley. There's no traffic enforcement whatsoever. People are running red lights. People are dying because people are running red lights. We have distracted drivers. We have all sorts of problems with traffic. And if you talk to the officers, they say, we don't have the resources. So it's not their fault. It's the administration's fault for not hiring the officers that we need. We also, and I guess I'm out of time.
Same question, Mayor Bieter, their top 3 priorities for the city budget.
Well, as I said, we have some of the lowest crime that we've ever had. In fact, the lowest crime we've had since we started keeping records this way. But we do need new police officers, and it's because of the demographic changes in our department. People are retiring because they're reaching that age. And we proposed all the officers that our police department has requested over the next budget cycles. Affordable housing is huge on that list. We proposed another $5 million to really make a dent in that. And it's a difficult issue, but we're going to do everything possible to make sure that you all have a place to live here in Boise, whether you're rent or owning. But those are the top priorities. Public transportation is another one we proposed, adding $1 million to Valley Regional Transit on priority routes, so we give even better service to the routes that make the most difference. So those are always the highest priorities, public safety being the first of them.
Brent Coles, same question, 1 minute.
Thank you. So I looked at the city's financial statements last night. 2010, we collected $100 million in property taxes. In 2018, it was $150 million in property taxes. So there's clearly, that's escalating 5% per year, year after year. So the opportunity really is there now to not take the full 3% that we've been taking in the past year after year and lower property taxes, don't escalate them, so that you can more easily get a mortgage for your first home, for the first property. Also, those property taxes are all passed through to rents. So if you're paying rent, you're paying those property taxes. So the priority would be to cut spending so that we don't continue to increase your property taxes. And of course, transportation, a mass transit system that works for you and works for me, so we can get to work and back and to school and back. Thank you.
Lauren McLean, 1 minute.
Sure. When it comes to city budgets and priorities, so many of us will have the same priorities because most of the budget is restricted and should be restricted or taken up by public safety, because that's so important that we have a safe community. And then what really matters is how we then go about setting the rest of the priorities or implementing the plans that we have. And for the other, when I think about it, it would be, of course, public safety first, fire, police on the ground, and then affordability and transportation. And that means not just spending more money in those areas, but spending more time to create people-scaled programs for housing, to create incentives so that innovators in our own community have the opportunity to create housing for people. And then on transportation, we need to fund further a couple bus routes that move more often, but most importantly, set to work on creating consensus in the entire region about how we're going to build out transit to protect our air.
Courtney Nielsen, 1 minute.
Well, with a new mayor comes new priorities. So things that are already allocated out, like a stadium or library remodel, would be scratched. You would find those 3 new priorities, such as transportation. Definitely, police are such a value, balance in everything. So I think it would be a new and exciting opportunity to see where we can grow on those 3 priorities, but definitely starting from scratch with new priorities.
Wayne Richey, 1 minute.
First, I have to say that overall, Boise, we do way more things right than we do wrong. We are on everybody's top 10 list as best cities in America. We can attribute that to the 2 mayors that are sitting here. I think Boise, overall, we do a pretty good job. Unfortunately, I know you've all heard this from me before, that's what has attracted so many people here. And the growth is out of hand. My biggest concern was I believe that the property tax system we have needs a complete overhaul. People who lived here their whole life should not have to pay for new people's growing pains.
All right, the next question will start with Dave Bieter. The question is, many Boise residents seem to support the idea of a new main library for the city, but many people, even those who support the idea, have raised concerns, among other things, about the cost, the use of Moshe Safdie as the architect, the design of the library, and moving the cabin. Given all of the negative pushback since the designs were first revealed, do you think the public process was adequate and that the public was adequately brought into the process from the beginning? Knowing what you know now, would you have done anything differently? 1 minute.
Well, we had 30 public forums and outreach efforts leading forward on the new main library over the course of many years. We engaged young people and neighbors and stakeholders and those that surround the neighborhood. So, and open houses for everyone to come. But one thing, and we need a new main library. We need a great new main library. We have, thanks to all of our hard work, we have 4 neighborhood libraries, but you need a mothership. You need, it's also the neighborhood library for so many in the city, but you need that central library to feed the other ones. But I was concerned about cost. This is one of the toughest bidding environments that we've ever seen. Construction costs are going up, so I put it on pause to make sure that we came in the right number. We've had great philanthropic efforts that lower the cost to you. It's about a $50 million cost to taxpayers. That's the right number. We're going to bring it in at that cost, but we're going to have a great library in the future.
Brent Coles, your thoughts on the library, the process, and the future of the proposal.
So clearly, Boise working together came together because they didn't feel they'd had a voice. And so my first experience with that was they were talking about doing a proposition, an initiative, going out and collecting some signatures. And so I went to one of their meetings, and the opportunity there for us to vote on whether or not we spend over $25 million for library is there before us. The opportunity to vote yes on that, as well as the stadium, anything over $5 million of public money going into a stadium. So certainly support that, the opportunity for us to have a voice. People felt they didn't have a voice. I know when I went around and collected signatures, everyone signed it. They said, yeah, we want to have more voice. So the perception was they really weren't given the opportunity for input.
And Lauren McLean, your thoughts on the public input process and if you would have done anything differently?
Yeah, so first off, I want to say that libraries are so important. And as I've talked to hundreds and thousands, actually thousands of people in this community, we share the value of libraries, that they're so important. And a library should be celebrated and not so controversial. So while I too was part of the process that selected the architect and we went through a public process, it's on leaders to recognize if the public is feeling as though we didn't do it right. And I recognize that a downtown library is so important that we want to celebrate it and do it right. So if that means pausing, having more conversations, talking about the scale, the appropriate budget, but most importantly, the vision and value around library, then let's do that so that when it's built, the community rallies around it rather than feeling so frustrated from the process. And so yes, I in retrospect, I changed things, and that's what leaders need to do. Listen, pivot when necessary, and then move forward so you can accomplish your goal.
Courtney Nielsen, your thoughts on the future of the public library?
I love libraries. I have a library card and I use it. And to remodel at such a scale and move things I don't think is appropriate. I heard there was talk of moving the library over to the old Kmart St. Luke's building, which I thought was brilliant because it's right by the Greenbelt. It has wonderful parking, and it's newly remodeled by St. Luke's. The library branches, more of them around Boise, I think is a beautiful idea because it's networked into the neighborhoods. So I don't think anybody's against libraries. I think the elaborateness of this was overwhelming.
Wayne Richey, same question, 1 minute.
I try to stay up on the news as much as I can. I have a full-time job. I'm busy. Up until about 4 or 5 months ago, I could not have told you anything about the library. And a lot of people feel that way. And I think it's almost like a shrine, $100 million library. It caught a lot of people off guard. And it kind of pissed them off. So, yeah, I understand there was meetings and stuff like that, but most people out there had no idea about it. So.
And Rebecca Arnold, 1 minute.
My time doesn't start.
No, we'll give you the full minute.
Thank you for the question. I would start over on the library. It's very clear from the amount of public distrust and unhappiness with the current project that we need to start over. This is a grandiose project that wastes a lot of land. There's a lot of wasted space inside, and the cost is just ridiculous. I'm offended that we hired an out-of-the-country architect for this. We should have hired a local architect who understands our community, understands our values, and understands that things like the Log Cabin Literary Center are important to us, that we should not move that. So I would start over and figure out, do we really need a new library or can we remodel the one? If we need a new library, then have a local architect design it and scale down the costs so that we can maybe have another branch library elsewhere or maintain the ones that we have.
Next question, we'll start with Brent Coles. The question is, would you support any amount of public financing for a downtown multi-use stadium? If not, why not? If so, what level would you be comfortable with supporting?
Quick answer, no, I don't support public funds going into a stadium. In the 90s, many cities did that. Larger cities, bigger cities, they put a lot of public funds into those to attract people to their downtowns. It was a big deal. Their downtowns were dying. Our downtown is not dying. It's a beautiful place. We've done a lot of work as a community to make this a wonderful place to be. We don't need something to influence people to come downtown. We don't have the parking. We don't have the transportation, the access. So, and I believe it would be appropriate for private developer, private money to go ahead somewhere in the valley, have a nice stadium, enjoy going to the baseball games. But we've heard just lately that we may or may not even have a franchise in the future. Those things are delicate. And so, no, I wouldn't support public funds.
Lauren McLean?
Funding a stadium isn't a priority of mine, and given the extreme need for affordable housing and a focus on transportation, that's where I'd put public dollars. And there was a time that I thought that it would be a great investment. Well, I shouldn't even say that, but I said, show me the project, and if it makes sense for public dollars, then I'd consider it. But at this point, our city has shifted and the needs have shifted, and people are struggling to find housing they can afford. Traffic and congestion is getting worse, and public dollars ought to be going to investments that support everyone and lift our wages and make our lives better. And if a downtown stadium works for the developer to do it, that'd be a great amenity. But public dollars ought to be invested in a way that helps everyone.
Courtney Nielsen.
No on public funding on the stadium, and a private developer can invest in the Hawks and make a newly remodeled Hawk Stadium.
Wayne Richey, 1 minute.
I live about a half mile from Hawk Stadium, and they don't fill it up. It's, I think it's fine for them. I know they want a new facility. Well, let them build one then. It doesn't have to be downtown. It doesn't have to be right in the heart of things. I know parking would be a huge issue. As far as a multi-use thing, we have a lot of venues around town that we can use. We don't need, like I said, if somebody wants to build one, great. I don't think we should spend a dime on it publicly.
Rebecca Arnold.
Thank you for the question. No, I do not support any public dollars going into a stadium, period. If it's a great economic boost, then the development community will build it. I also don't support putting it in downtown Boise. It makes no sense to try to shoehorn a facility like that into downtown Boise. We don't have the infrastructure to support it. We don't have the transportation system to support that. So no, I am not in favor of having a stadium in downtown Boise. I lived in St. Louis, Missouri, which does have a stadium. And I can tell you there are certainly some benefits, but there are certainly some downsides to it. You tend to get more crime around facilities like that. I didn't feel safe going in and out of the stadium, so no on the stadium for me.
Mayor Bieter.
Well, I'm really happy to draw this distinction from my opponents. The Greater Boise Auditorium District exists, collects room taxes to pay for auditoriums and stadiums and theaters. That's why they collect the tax. We pay it when you stay in a room, anywhere you go, you pay that tax. And we support amenities in all those cities. And that is the public funding that should go to build a multi-purpose sports park. At BYU, we've talked about this for months, actually a couple of years. And you're for it because you understand young people want to get out with their peers in an affordable, accessible use. You want to go to concerts. You want to go to fun runs. And the room tax that other people pay should pay for that. And I'm for it. A private developer has to carry a big burden of it. But I think it's a great amenity, and it ought to be downtown. You heard one of my opponents slip and say, I was for it, and then start to correct herself. She was for it until it got hard. These things are difficult. We're going to see this through and make sure you have a new stadium.
Time. All right, the next question will start with Lauren McLean. You'll have 1 minute. Question is, you originally supported the city pursuing the defense of its so-called camping ordinance that bans people from sleeping in public places unless they have nowhere else to go. But you have since changed your position. Can you explain your position now and why it has changed?
Sure. And I have a question. When we're called out, are we able to just follow up on that or no? Or
you can use your 1 minute however you like.
I'll answer the question. So I talked to the Idaho Press and the Idaho Statesman about that. In 2014, I voted against the camping ordinance because I didn't believe and don't understand how, when people are homeless, providing them a ticket and putting them into the criminal justice system and spiraling them further into difficulty is going to get them off the streets. In an executive session, we talked about taking it on to the Supreme Court. I explained that I argued vehemently against it until I came to understand that all the providers supported the idea and felt that I was litigating old ideas from 2014 when I voted against the ordinance. Came to find out once it was publicized that it wasn't. So I said all that. We didn't vote on it. I stopped arguing. I regret that I did that when I realized that, yes, my concerns were still carried by others, and asked how I felt about it. I was honest about that evolution of the process. And the city can do so much better. We have great programs that we have built, we can bring to scale, and provide the services that people need to help them get off the streets.
Time. Courtney Nielsen, your thoughts on the camping ordinance and the city's pursuit of the defense of that?
Okay, so homelessness is out there. It's at Catherine Albertson's Park. It's due to mental health, drugs and alcohol, abuse. And thank you to all the advocates that tirelessly every day take care of those homeless people. So if to file suit and want to arrest people and stick them in jail, as long as there is a means to an end with hypnotherapy, counseling, something to make sure the homeless have a successful beginning to the end.
Wayne Richey.
I've talked to my fair share of homeless people, and getting them into the system with the courts and fines and stuff like that very simply makes a difficult situation worse. They don't have the means to pay these fines. They don't have the means to go to court. And the court system and the probation system, it's brutal. It's not warm and fuzzy. They're not necessarily there to help these people. So, and God, this is such a difficult topic because there's mental and drug addiction issues that are very difficult to fix. People like to think that they can get these people help, but it just might not happen. But we do need to go out of our way to help the people that have simply fallen down, that just need a hand up. Those are the people we can help.
Okay. Rebecca Arnold, question about whether you would support the defense of the city's anti-camping ordinance.
I do think it's important for the city to be able to control camping within the city. The Cooper Court situation, we just can't have those situations exist. There were small children there, there were drugs there were weapons there. It was very unsafe for those who lived there, and there were no sanitation facilities, so it was a huge problem. We do have to have some ability to control camping within the city. Having said that, I don't think issuing a ticket should be the first resort. I think we need to look at the underlying causes of homelessness and try to help with those. Addiction issues, mental health issues. Are we providing adequate facilities to help folks that need a little help to get back on their feet? I think we need to look at that first before we start writing tickets.
Mayor Bieter.
Well, toughest issue cities deal with this anywhere is homelessness. But nobody's done more than we've done on this issue. The Allenbaugh House, Crisis Mental Health and Detox Center is free, and about half of those beds go to homeless people. Just this year alone, we're going to build 70 units of housing for the chronically homeless. New Path is already open for 45 people. And for our homeless veterans, just in a couple months, we're going to open up Valor Point for another 25, and services both from the VA and medical providers and work help and substance abuse are all go as part of that. But you can't have camps, folks. They don't work. They're unsafe. They're unsanitary. It's the opposite of compassion, and we know exactly what's going to happen. Cooper Court started because our police mistakenly didn't think they could cite. It's always the last resort. We've only issued 4 citations this year. We're almost through the year. We have to have that ability. That's what's kept Boise safe.
Brent Coles, 1 minute.
Yeah, I did not and don't support the idea of going back into court and going back through this process. I think there's no question about it. The opportunity to not have camps is to help people individually, one-on-one, as we find people out there in the streets. And we have wonderful resources in the city of Boise. We should continue to support those resources. The nonprofit organizations do a wonderful job. Churches do a great job. The community working together and providing housing for our homeless. So I think we're doing a great job. I think we just continue to do that.
Okay, the next question will start with Courtney Nielsen. The city of Boise has made efforts to address the lack of affordable housing. We're not talking about homelessness, we're talking about affordable housing, such as grower housing program, a housing loan program, and owning and operating a supply of rental units for income-eligible residents. Do you support spending tax dollars on these programs? Would you reduce these efforts, expand these efforts? What approach would you take as mayor?
Wages, hiring, higher wages. People want to, when a barista makes less than a coffee, that's a problem. So we need to work together to bring in companies like Dan Price, who has Gravity Payments, who believes in empowering his employees with higher wages so they can build and develop their own lives and their own homes. And then when you empower your employees with higher wages and livable wages, then it creates happy customers and therefore more profit. It's that simple. So wages, it just comes back to wages. The government doesn't need to take care of everybody. We just need to get those wages up.
Okay. Wayne Richey?
If this valley continues to grow at the rate that it is, we are doomed. Right now, a 2-bedroom apartment is $1,200. If 20,000 people won't move in next summer, it's going to be $1,500. This country works on supply and demand. If those kind of numbers keep moving into the valley, there's just going to be more and more of a demand. And we're selling our valley off to the highest bidder. And people born and raised here, working at the wages that we have in this town, are being priced out. That's why so many people live in Canyon County. That's why 120,000 cars drive back and forth on I-84 every day. We have got to control growth.
Rebecca Arnold, would you support tax dollars on affordable housing programs in the city?
I do not think it's an appropriate function of government to be in the landlord-tenant business. So I think we need to shift the focus to private industry and make it easier for private industry to provide the affordable housing that we need. It can be done in a number of ways. Tax incentives, as long as there's an enforcement mechanism, which apparently there wasn't in one case that the city of Boise tried. But I think it has to go back to private industry, to streamlining the building permit process, to make it easier to get a building permit and get the housing units on board. The other thing about the city being the landlord, it takes property off the tax rolls. What that does, it shifts that tax burden to someone else. The taxes don't go away, it just shifts it to someone else, which increases rents.
Mayor Bieter?
Well, I do support it, and the programs you mentioned are our programs. And we talk about this so much at BYP. You're unfortunately feeling that crunch. But let me tell you a great example. This is the kind of thing that we're working on. Just down Fairview is a development called Adair Manor. It's open for rent right now. It has workforce, it has market, and it has affordable housing, all in the same development, 160 units. The city owns the property, and it's a great example of what we want to do all around the city. The state doesn't help us hardly at all. We have a state housing trust fund, but there's no money in it. I don't even know if that is a trust fund. There isn't money in there. We're going to try to do our own with land that we own, land from private parties, to build on that and leverage it for affordable housing. The other thing we have to do is keep building housing. We have to approve developments that you all can buy a house in. And people don't want to see that, but we need to do that as well.
Time. Brent Coles, 1 minute.
Yes, we did that. We've done that in the past. Oak Park is a really great example. It's down on Vista. There were townhomes on the exterior. There are Section 8 housing vouchers. It's the opportunity for public-private partnerships. The city was involved with the property. We continue, I believe that the city, that we as a government, we can use federal dollars. We had community development block grant dollars that we used in that particular project. So yes, we can be involved. We can do some things to help alleviate and not contribute to homelessness, but alleviate that and provide the opportunity for low-income, moderate-income people to have a place to live.
Lauren McLean, 1 minute.
Yes, this is definitely a priority of mine for dollars. And that's why I talked about where I would put public dollars when the question was asked. And we need to make sure that everyone that works in the city can live in the city. So those that are working in the service industry, in bars downtown, in early jobs, like in nonprofits, can find a place to live in the community that they're fighting for. I have a plan online for housing and have worked with and listened to a whole bunch of experts that say we need to do smaller people-scale projects as well. Use the land that we have to work with innovators in the housing space to create affordable housing options. Not everybody wants to buy a home, so we can use an affordable housing zone so that we would encourage people building apartments along transit lines to have some at different rates if they got to have more density, different things like that. Because at the end of the day, city dollars can help people thrive in this community. And so it's definitely a priority of mine.
The next question, we'll start with Wayne Richey. Property tax revenues coming into the city of Boise coffers have increased from $113 million in 2013 to $157 million this year, and the city has elected to take the maximum allowed 3% increase each year since then. At the same time, property values have also been increasing. Do you think rising property taxes is an issue, and if so, as mayor, how would you address it?
I'm so glad I get to go first on this because I have a plan. Most of you know I want to build a $26 billion wall to keep people out. Well, apparently that's not acceptable. So that leaves us, and I don't want to put up road signs, and I don't want to send out hate mail. So we need to come up with a different tax plan. I would like to, first off, we need to completely rewrite the property taxes. Grandma and Grandpa have just saw their property taxes triple. That is not acceptable. I would like to introduce proposition, whatever we got to do, vote on it, a property tax plan that goes off of how long you have lived here. Grandma and Grandpa that lived here their whole life, I don't believe should have to pay property taxes anymore. They paid their share. But if you move here and you buy a $500,000 house, I want to stick you like 3% and cut off the homeowner's exemption. Before you move here and take advantage of everything we've built,
Time.
I'm going to stick it to you.
Rebecca Arnold, do you think rising property taxes is an issue? And if so, as mayor, how would you address it?
It is a huge issue. And when you have folks who've been in their home for 30 years who have to sell it because they can't afford the tax bill, that's a problem. So yes, we do need to make some changes there. Changing the homeowner's exemption is one thing that will help homeowners, but that just shifts those taxes to someone else. The only way to truly deal with property taxes is to rein in spending, to be responsible with how we're spending tax dollars, to pay attention to every single dollar and figure out if you're getting the best values, and not have these vanity projects that we don't need. The fact that we have a $50 million slush fund for a library tells me we've been overtaxing our citizens. So we need to stop taking the maximum property tax amount every year, and we need to cut spending.
Mayor Bieter?
Could you repeat the question again?
Property tax revenues coming into the city of Boise coffers have increased from $113 million in 2013 to $157 million this year, and the city is elected to take the maximum allowed 3% increase each year since then. At the same time, property values have also been increasing in the city of Boise. Do you think rising property taxes is an issue, and if so, how would you address it?
Well, property taxes are an issue, and the remedies in the legislature. I was so proud this week. I hope you saw this. Your Boise legislators are proposing in the legislature how we're going to help property tax relief to homeowners and renters in Boise, from circuit breakers to first-time buyers, to the homeowners exemption that already exists that the legislature capped just a few years ago when it used to be indexed to inflation. I have great relationships with our legislators. I have the endorsement of nearly all of them. That's where we need to go to fix the process. because the 3% that we take is essential to parks and police and fire and libraries and the affordable housing programs that we want to do. You get great value for what you pay, but the systems become skewed. It's the legislature that needs to take that up. I will do anything I can to help, and our legislators here are leading the charge. There are other areas of the state that we can band together and solve that problem.
Time. Brent Coles, 1 minute.
Well, I joined the city council back in 1983, and we'd just come out of a 1% initiative, Prop 13 type initiative, and the city had been reducing firefighters and police officers, and there were really no opportunities for new parks. I am very concerned that if we continue to take the 3% year after year after year, and remember, we're also getting 2% in growth, so it's really going up 5% a year. So we can stop taking the 3%. We've got to show good faith that we won't take all the dollars just because we're allowed to take them.
Lauren McLean, 1 minute.
Sure, I've heard stories all around the city about that very concern, that folks are concerned that their kids, or like our kids, aren't able to find a place that they can come back to because the wages don't pay enough to be able to buy a home or even rent an apartment. And that seniors or people on fixed incomes are concerned about having to move out of their homes. Yet at the same time, we have that hard choice around how do we continue to provide services like fire and police. And so as we think about how best to protect our residents, there's a couple things that I propose that we do. That we look to make sure that impact fees are truly covering the cost of growth. As a council person, I helped make sure that we were charging them 100% so that residents aren't paying for growth. We need to make sure, again, as prices have changed, that the impact fees are the right place so that we aren't paying for that. The homeowners exemption, as a council person, I worked with Elaine Clegg and we connected with city council people all around the state to talk about the impact of the changes and ask the legislature to reform it. I'll do the same as mayor with mayors and cities. And then we've got to see what else we can do. Oh, thank you.
Courtney Nielsen, 1 minute.
The 3% would not be an issue. With a new mayor comes new priorities, and to raise your property taxes is not one of them for me. I could be way off here, but with the mayor and the promotion of Boise and the people moving in here was promotion to create more revenue for the stadium and the library. But if you have a new mayor, you have new priorities.
Okay. The next question, we will start with Rebecca Arnold. And the question is, in the mayor's recent State of the City address, he unveiled a new program called Boise Climate Now, setting big environmental goals for the city. As mayor, would you proceed with these goals?
Well, I think it is important to protect our environment. I think clean energy is important. However, I think there's been a lot of lip service given to it. If you look at the design of the grandiose library, it's not an energy efficient building. There are no solar panels there. It's going to cost, what, $60,000 a year just to wash the windows? So you gotta pay attention to what you're really doing and not just talk about it. But I do think it's important to work towards clean energy, and I walk the walk. I have 39 solar panels on my roof, so I agree with working towards clean energy.
Mayor Bieter, how would you proceed with your Boise Climate Now plans?
Well, it's one of the most important issues that we face, and especially for the generation that BYP represents. I was the first mayor to sign the Mayor's Climate Change Agreement. I was also renewed that agreement, first mayor in Idaho. We've dedicated all kinds of resources in the city, from curbside recycling to better the Boise River, to make it cleaner so that we do all we can on that side. And we've committed to make our own city facilities clean energy by 2030 and the city as a whole by 2035. But what I made sure that we said is, if it's affordable and accessible, those are important modifiers to that. If I had $1 billion, I could do it next week. We don't have $1 billion. We've got to make sure that we make it as aggressive as we can, but not spike your energy costs, especially young people and those that are elderly. If we spike those energy costs, it won't work. We have to do both things.
Brent Coles, 1 minute.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before. As an avid skier, come down through that smog sometimes in January and February, and it's miserable. And so, yes, absolutely, the opportunity to have clean energy, to promote that within our city, to use our city facilities. And again, those are priorities, right? Do we build a $100 million library, or do we focus on clean energy? It's just a matter of priorities. Where do those dollars go? Thank you.
Lauren McLean, 1 minute.
So this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart. I've worked in the environmental space for almost 20 years here in Idaho. And we can't afford not to take action on climate. At the end of the day, if we transition to 100% clean energy, and as mayor, I will beat that goal that I led our council to pass, which was 2035, but I will beat that because we can't afford not to do it, because it impacts our power costs, that impacts our affordability, and it creates room to innovate so that we can build better jobs, and we have to thrive in a global marketplace, and climate is changing everything. I've also said that as mayor, I would seek to wean the city government buildings off natural gas and move towards carbon neutrality. And it's my vision for the environment that has led the conservation voters for Idaho to endorse my candidacy. And I have a clean energy, equitable city plan online that talks about the intersection of moving on climate, being bold in this arena, and connecting it to our economy and long-term resilience.
I am probably the least green person up here. I am. If your world is in the North End and everybody can ride their bike to work, and that's nice, but 120,000 cars travel on I-84 every day at 10 miles each way, 20-mile-a-gallon cars. That's 60,000 gallons of gasoline that we're blowing out into the atmosphere every day. And this is not a Boise issue. This has got to become a Valley issue. Anything we want to do, what affects Caldwell and Canyon County and whatnot affects us, and vice versa. So we need to seriously look at people that live in Boise should be working in Boise. People that live in Caldwell, and it used to be that way, but it's not anymore. And I do believe that for those 2 months out of the year, when we have an inversion, that's when we need to make the hard choices and reduce on traveling.
Time. And Courtney, the question is, in the mayor's recent State of the City address, he unveiled a new program called Boise Climate Now, setting big environmental goals for the city. As mayor, would you proceed with those goals?
I think the I think anything with balance, and I am and always have loved Mother Earth and want to take care of her, so I truly believe that Ada County and Canyon County are not the only people responsible for clean air for our emissions. So I really don't see why the whole state can't pay $20, get an emissions test, and we pool that money together to take care of our roads and highways, because we are all in this together. And seeing license plates from all over the great state of Idaho, here in Boise, I think this is bigger than Ada and Canyon County. To set a limit of 2035, I think is unreal, but any positive movement forward is good.
Okay. The next question will start with Mayor Bieter. The question is, do you believe entrepreneurship is important to our community? And if so, how would you foster it in Boise?
Of course, I believe entrepreneurship is important, and I foster it this way. I'm just so proud and pleased of Trailhead. It was a long time coming. It took a big lift. We had the original founders put in some money. The city put in some, CCDC put in some. Micron was our first big funder, and I'll never forget when they really helped us out. You have to have a hub. You have to have a place where people go to find about new opportunities. The real important work tonight has not been going on here. It's been going on in the peripheral, where people are still coming into Trailhead and working on those ideas. So that's hugely important. Trailhead North moving on is also. But it means that we work with Boise State. We have a new opportunity to engage them in Venture College. It means constantly trying to feed the pipeline of ideas that leads to new companies. I believe you fix the roof while the sun is shining, the economy is good, but we won't rest, and always look for new opportunities, especially for you young people.
Brent Coles, 1 minute.
Yes, clearly, and we really are a community of entrepreneurship with many great examples. Micron Technology that started in the basement of a dental office, the Simplot Corporation, Jack Simplot out in his first opportunity to buy some, but in that case he was buying cattle and pigs and then turning over the opportunity and built into an international corporation, Albertsons, that started here. So of course, we should do all we can, and I think Boise State University is a great partner in that. And likewise, the University of Idaho and CWI. We have opportunities to work together, the community working together, and let's continue that. It's a great place to live and play and work and start a new business.
Lauren McLean, 1 minute.
Entrepreneurship is so incredibly important to a city because it really becomes the lifeblood of the economy when local people with local ideas launch businesses and grow, and that's so important to Boise. I'm an entrepreneur. 10 years ago I started my own business. I run it, and I've spent time working here, but also in neighborhoods all around the city, and that's why I've proposed that we look at how the city can encourage other hubs in neighborhoods beyond downtown so that entrepreneurs can live and work and seek community in their own neighborhoods. And also, I think another way that the city can, and I would propose that we partnership, is that we do everything we can from a purchasing perspective to support local entrepreneurs and businesses. If you have products that we could use, then let's figure out how to use them to help your businesses grow. And then we have to remember that businesses led by women, people of color, other marginalized communities have a harder time getting access to capital. And so leveraging relationships as a city to help make that happen is so important to grow our economy here.
Courtney Nielsen.
Absolutely. Entrepreneurship is fantastic. It's built on collaboration, innovation, people, and that's so fun. I love it that I got to be part of something so wonderful and people still love till today, is the Boise Pie Company. They came here, wanted to open a pie shop, and they did amazing, and they're thriving, and I got to be a part of that. And like Mr. Coles said, we are a town of leaders. Idaho is built on this kind of just go for it, go big or go home. So absolutely, thank you.
Wayne Richey, 1 minute.
If you want to open a mechanic shop or an auto body shop anywhere in this valley, the government organizations are not very friendly. The county, the fees you have to pay, the taxes you have to pay, the matching, Social Security, the matching. Most small business owners that I know, and I know several auto body shop owners, mechanic shop owners, that's what I do, they would not encourage you to open a small business in this valley. It's brutal. They're being taxed to death. So yeah, absolutely. Any help we could give to a small business it's very, very important.
Rebecca Arnold, do you believe entrepreneurship is important to our community? If so, how can we foster it in Boise?
It is absolutely vital to our community. We have to have fresh ideas and new businesses, and we have to have something to keep our kids here. I have a 32-year-old, and I want him to stay in Boise. The young people here are our future, so we need to have opportunities for the younger generation to start their own business or work in an industry that interests them. The other piece of that, though, is supporting local businesses. I don't have an Amazon account. I may be the only person in the room that doesn't, because I don't buy things online. I go to the stores. I go to the locals to get the things that I need. All my campaign signs, my campaign materials, and I'm maybe the only candidate that did this, but they're all sourced locally. So it's important to not only support growing businesses, but to support keeping them in business by buying local.
The next question will start with Brent Coles. What role do you believe young professionals play in our community? And as mayor, what would you do to foster that?
Well, of course, the city is becoming your city. And so the opportunity to have young people work in the mayor's office, to work in any part of the city government is really very, very, very important to us. for the input from young people is very important. And as I've indicated when I was at Boise State University, we do a lot of studies in the city of Boise. Right now we're doing a $300,000 study to update our zoning ordinance. Go to the university, we've got faculty, we've got staff, we have the students who are just thriving and looking for that opportunity to be involved in a study like that that would redo our city, redo our ordinance, redo our land use planning. But let's use the brains, the minds, the entrepreneurs, the students from our own local city to plan our city.
Lauren McLean, 1 minute.
Can you repeat the question, actually?
What role do you believe young professionals play in our community? And as mayor, what would you do to foster that role?
Okay. Well, young professionals play a central role in our community because you're part of our community. And we are all working together to build a city that can sustain us and those that come after us. When I think about it, there's so many opportunities for a mayor to engage, and anybody else as well. From a research and development perspective, seeking your ideas and based on the work that you do to help us come up with solutions, to most importantly, having listening sessions and understanding where and what young professionals need in order to feel as though all of us can thrive here. On commissions, we have mayoral commissions where young professionals should, can, and will engage. And then, of course, it's up to leaders to build the next generation of leaders. So seeking opportunities to connect young professionals with boards that are outside the city, neighborhood associations, so you can impact your own neighborhood, and then become more involved with the city.
Courtney Nielsen, 1 minute.
Being a part of the youth and the generation that is coming up, I think is fantastic. I don't know anything about the internet very much, and I don't have an Amazon account either, but the knowledge that you have, because you're the up and coming, and to collaborate that and invite events, have events. I love Jump. I personally haven't been to an event there, but I love what they do. They are catering to youth, and they are out there, they're advertising, and I love what they're doing. So engaging with other venues like that and bringing, and it's not just about the youth entrepreneurs, it's about everybody, because anybody can be an entrepreneur.
Wayne Richey, 1 minute.
Last February, I started driving a Lyft van part-time, and I've got to meet a lot of people in this city. It's actually been a lot of fun, and there are some very bright, very eager, wonderful kids out there. They're awesome, and we need to, not so much college, but we need more apprenticeship programs, schools like CWI, stuff like that, to get them into our workforce. You don't have to go to 4 years of college to get a job. Welders and plumbers make more than probably all of us here. But that's the direction we need to go to help these kids along.
Rebecca Arnold, same question. What role do you believe young professionals play in our community? And as mayor, what would you do to support that?
You know, we all get bent out of shape over issues sometimes and focused on other things, but at the end of the day, there is nothing that any of us do that's more important than launching the next generation. That's one of our most important responsibilities, and I think we have to make sure we're providing the educational system that's needed, not just colleges, but trade schools, and we also need to make sure that we're providing internships for students and for young people coming out of college, apprenticeships. So yes, I think it's very important for us to stay focused on that and provide as many opportunities as we can for students to work with, or young professionals to work within the Valley.
Mayor Bieter, 1 minute.
Well, I'm been so pleased with the relationship I've been able to build with the Boise young professionals. We've been meeting 3 or 4 times a year for a dozen years, and I've listened to your concerns. We gritted our teeth together through the downturn. I'll never forget those times and the effect that it had on you. So it starts with that, listening to your concerns. And I know that they're public transportation and their pre-K programs and daycare programs and how you're going to pay for the costs of those. I know that you want amenities for yourselves and for your young families, and for us to keep doing that. One of my biggest concerns about the future is not about you all, because I just see what kind of vitality you have, but it's those that already have their saying no more. And one of the reasons I want to run is to make sure that doesn't happen, because we're not building the city for me and those older than me. We're building it for you and for my daughter. And I'll keep engaging you fundamentally in every decision that we make. Ben Quintana, who founded BYP, is one of my big supporters. We can do more, and we will.
Time. All right, the next question will start with Lauren McLean. With the city of Boise providing the lion's share of funding for public transportation in the Treasure Valley, what would your plan be as mayor when it comes to public transportation? Would you spend less? Would you spend more? Would you try to get other cities to pony up more? Would you spend money differently, such as on other ideas or modes of transportation? 1 minute.
Sure, public transportation is a regional issue, and yes, Boise spends quite a bit on it, and we can do more. It's a budget priority perspective to be able to build out more bus lines that move more often, because if they move 15 minutes, then people will use them more often. But most importantly, we have to build a regional vision, and my plan is that within my first 4 years, I would have an actual plan on transit that's shared by regional leaders, because we have to be able to work as two counties and partner with the state. And after 16 years of trying to get local option one way, I propose that instead we build a vision and ask other people, instead of Boise First, to ask the state to partner with us so we can build out a true regional model that includes rail or modern pods, trackless trams, and of course a fully functioning bus system in the city, and pathways for people so that those willing to walk or ride to work can connect safely from where they live to where they work, because all of those things together get more cars off the road.
Courtney Nielsen, 1 minute.
I'm a huge fan of a commuter train on the already available railroad. We've all, well, I don't know if we've all been, but Highway 55 to McCall is chaos, and taking a commuter train up to McCall to enjoy the weekend would be so much faster to get there. In and out of everybody coming from Ontario, there has got to be so yes, making friends with all of those counties and cities is exciting, because it's an opportunity for collaboration and get, so yes, absolutely. Just a big fan of all of that, working together, building new relationships. I mean, it's exciting. Sorry, I get a little carried away.
Wayne Richey, 1 minute.
I do believe that we have to have some sort of bus system in the valley, in the city especially, because not everybody can drive. Not everybody has a car. A lot of people have a lot of friends with sight issues that can't drive. They'll never be able to drive again. So we need to cater to those people, to offer them something to get around. As far as public transportation in the city to alleviate congestion, I just don't see it practical at this time. As far as something going between here and Canyon County, if you've ever ridden the BART in San Francisco, it's fast. The train does not come in contact with automobiles. It's got to be elevated, underground, have its own line. We cannot put trains back together with automobiles. It'd be a catastrophe. So anything we do put between here and Canyon County, it's going to be expensive. It'll work. It'll move a lot of people, but it will be very expensive.
Rebecca Arnold, your plans for public transportation if you are mayor?
Well, public transportation is important, but if we have to figure out what's not going right with the current bus system. If you look at this chart, costs have gone up dramatically and ridership is going down. How do we go to the legislature and sell local option tax when we have these kinds of numbers? So we have to figure out how to do the bus better. And I won't begin to tell you that I have the answer to that, but I think we can bring together the right people to figure out the answer. We also have to look at other forms of transportation. ACHD runs the most successful public transportation agency in the valley. It's called Commuter Ride. It's a van pool system, and it also matches up carpoolers. So we have to look at not only a bus system, but at alternatives like that. As far as rail, there are challenges, but we need to take a look at that as well. Rail between Canyon County and Boise.
Mayor Bieter, 1 minute.
Well, the first rule of any endeavor, like young professionals know, is to show up. And my opponent, the first Valley Regional Transit meeting she went to was 2 months ago, after almost 9 years on city council. Showing up, you would know, and I have relationships with all the elected officials across the valley. We meet every month in the Treasure Valley Partnership. You would know that they're stretched. They have parks and fire departments and police departments to support. And after that, they do what they can to ante in and to build transit. And we have wide agreement across the valley on the importance of transit, and that the rail corridor is one of those important corridors. But this is where you don't get something for nothing. You're going to hear up here, let's get a light rail, let's get a tram. You simply have to have a funding source. And that funding source has to come from a different source than the property taxes. We're going to do all we can, but we need another funding source. No great transportation system works without it, and that we need a local option.
Brent Coles, 1 minute.
So clearly, yes, we do need alternative sources of revenue to support the wide-ranging mass transit system that we need throughout the valley. But here in the city of Boise, instead of building a $100 million library or $11 million on an architect, we can divert $1 or $2 or $3 million and put in a transit system that works for us here in Boise. We can have ridership for free. We do that in the spring for a week, and ridership goes up by 20% when we do that. Well, for $700,000 to $800,000 a year, you could have free ridership for an entire year. Add some additional routes. Get some smaller buses that go into the neighborhoods. Let's make it more available for people to use. If we build a $100 million library, look, these legislators that come from rural communities where they're struggling just to take care of their local issues, they drive by and see us spending $100 million on a library, they're going to say, Boise is flush with money.
All right, we are going to do a lightning round as promised. All right, we're going to start with Rebecca. You get 10 seconds. 10 seconds. I know.
I can't
Politicians.
Catch my breath in 10 seconds.
Yeah. All right, so 10 seconds each. Tell us how you feel about e-scooters.
About what?
E-scooters.
Oh, you know, they're dangerous. Some cities are now looking at banning them, like Nashville, Tennessee. So, you know, I think maybe it was a great idea, but
Mayor Bieter?
we're seeing injuries.
I'm serious.
E-scooters, without too many of them, work, period. I don't want to hear about the issue. I want to see it working. Don't get too many, and we'll be fine. People love them of all ages.
Brent Coles?
I just don't have the balance to ride them, but they look like fun to me.
Lauren McLean?
I love e-scooters in heels, I love e-scooters in tennis shoes, and I really love e-scooter dates with my husband, Scott.
Courtney Nielsen?
I don't have an opinion. I think they look fun.
Wayne Richey?
I drive Lyft and I take drunk people home Friday and Saturday night. I've seen absolutely hammered kids driving diagonally through intersections with 3 people on them.
Time. All right, we'll start with Mayor Bieter for the next one. 10 seconds. How do you feel about regulations on short-term rentals such as Airbnb?
It's really hard. I think we got to move real carefully. We want as many affordable units longer term as we can get, but let me have my short-termer over my garage.
Brent Coles?
I use them to vacation, so I think they're great.
Lauren McLean?
They provide an incredible community experience when you're vacationing, but we've got to make sure we have tenants, not just tourists, in our neighborhoods.
Courtney Nielsen?
It's a great option for homeowners.
Wayne Richey?
I love tiny houses and Airbnbs, but any new ones, you have to pass all the codes. It's important.
Rebecca Arnold?
It's coming down.
Time. No, I'm kidding.
I knew you were going to do that to me.
How do you feel about regulations on short-term rentals such as Airbnb?
I say no. Private property rights are very important, and Airbnbs, it's a private property rights issue.
All right, we'll start with Brent Coles for the next one. How do you feel about a Boise campus for College of Western Idaho?
Should happen.
Okay. Lauren
Looking
McLean?
forward to it.
Lauren McLean?
Let's get it done. It's great opportunity for students, and it's awesome to have students in our city.
Courtney Nielsen?
Absolutely.
Wayne Richey?
Is it getting publicly funded?
Yes. Yes.
Sure.
Rebecca Arnold?
I support a Boise campus, but I'd like to see it in West Boise where it's more accessible and it's easier to find a place to park. So,
Mayor Bieter?
I do support it. We've been working with CWI to try to find the way forward. And if I'm reelected, I'm going to make it a high priority.
Okay. All right, next question we'll start with Lauren. F-35s in Boise.
Just that?
Yep. How do you feel about F-35?
Don't tie me up, please.
How do you feel about F-35s in Boise?
They're not right for our city, and the environmental impact statement said we'd lose too many affordable houses. A school would be impacted. We can build our mission at Gowan without bringing planes that impact our housing.
Courtney Nielsen?
Mountain Home is a great location.
Wayne Richey?
I grew up with F4s in the valley. That big glaring, rah, that's the sound of freedom.
Rebecca Arnold?
I fully support our military and having a mission at Gowan Field, but the F-35 is not it. The environmental impacts, displacing people from their homes, the impact on children.
Mayor Bieter?
We need a new mission at Gowan Field. That's $160 million of economic activity. I'm not sure what the next aircraft is. If it's the F-35, we'll make it work better than the
Brent
F-4,
Coles?
Wayne.
Yes, but not carte blanche. Certainly don't want supersonic flights in and around our city.
Okay. Next question for Courtney Nielsen. How do you feel about urban warfare training exercises over Boise?
Okay, not familiar with what that is.
Wayne Richey?
That's scary. It is. I hope we don't come to that.
Rebecca Arnold?
I think with the noise and disruption, it's really not a good option to have that over the city of Boise.
Mayor Bieter?
Not real excited about it. Wrote a letter expressing concerns. Doesn't matter what we think about it, but it is so high, it's not much disruption.
Brent Coles?
Yeah, no, I think they can go out over the desert somewhere.
Lauren McLean?
Absolutely not.
All right. We'll start with Wayne. If state law were changed, would you support a city ordinance to allow medical marijuana in Boise?
A doctor should be able to prescribe anything he wants. He's a doctor. State, city, county, churches need to stay out of it.
Rebecca Arnold? If state law were changed, would you support a city ordinance that would allow medical marijuana in Boise?
If it became legal under the state, I think doctors should have the ability to prescribe what their patients need. I do not, however, support anybody being able to go out and get their medical marijuana card like they can
Mayor
in Oregon.
Bieter?
Medical marijuana locally under the guidelines of a physician, yes.
Brent Coles?
Yes.
Lauren McLean?
Yes.
And Courtney Nielsen?
I will support whatever the voters want.
Okay. All right. One more lightning round question. We'll start with Rebecca.
This is the last one.
It's the last lightning round. We have another round. We have one more round.
A round with all of us you want?
Yep. Okay. If you were king or queen for the day, what one thing would you do to improve Boise?
Reduce property taxes and make housing more affordable for everyone.
Mayor Boise? Mayor Boise.
All right.
I'm getting tired too. Mayor Bieter.
Get rid of ACHD and get our roads back.
Brent Coles?
I look forward to a really wonderful transportation system. Reduce the congestion on our roads, have a good transit system so I can get on a bus and go wherever I want to go.
Lauren McLean.
A home. Oh, he totally distracted me. I'm going to start. A home for everyone who works here to live here.
Courtney Nielsen.
A new filtration system and an automatic feeder for the koi ponds at the train depot, and a beautiful mass transit going through with a Starbucks.
Wayne Richey.
A $26 billion wall.
All right, we have one more round of questions. It'll be specific to each candidate, and we're going to start with Rebecca Arnold. Can you explain why you continue to pursue legal action against the City of Stanley, and do you think your experience with that process will inform how you would operate as mayor of Boise?
If the City of Stanley continues to violate my private property rights, then yes. There has been so much misinformation published about the lawsuits with the City of Stanley. The facts are, the first one we won. You won't find that on the city's website or in the media. There are 3 others that were settled in our favor. We lost one because the court found that we did not have standing to bring an open meeting law violation. So it's kind of like a drug dealer getting off because there was something wrong with the warrant. And then in one case, the court found that there was no jurisdiction over their refusal to issue a building permit, which was a change from previous law. That used to be something that you could pursue in judicial review, and the law changed, so we were unable to use that process just to get a building permit that we needed.
1 minute. Mayor Bieter, do you think it's a fair assessment, or is it an unfair characterization that you do not accept constructive criticism, feedback, input, or opposing viewpoints well?
Well, I think it's unfair. We've established one of the most open mayor's offices you can find. We have Saturday office hours 3-4 times a year. I meet with BIP 3-4 times a year, refugee groups. I go out to businesses every month. I'm approached on the street all the time. You can email us, you can tweet us, you can text us, any amount of ways to get a hold of us. And we also instituted, every 2 years we do a citizen survey, and we reach you where you are, and we take that information, and that informs the decisions that we make. Doesn't mean I'm going to agree with you. My wife listens so well, but she doesn't always agree with me. That's just the way it is. Part of this job is making tough decisions. There are going to be even tougher decisions coming in the future. I've shown that I can do that and make tough decisions for the long-term best interests of the city, and I want to continue to do that.
Brent Coles, how would you respond to someone who forgives you for previously misusing public funds in your previous term as mayor of Boise, but may feel that it would damage the reputation of Boise to rehire someone who previously misused public funds?
I appreciate that opportunity to talk about that. I think what I would do is no question about it, I would talk about the things that we committed to and that I promised I would do while I was mayor of the city of Boise, and give them the opportunity to reflect on our reputation and our reputation as a city. For example, a city that coming through that 1% initiative during that 10 years that I was mayor, we and Councilmember Mike Weatherall, working together with him, and he's now Justice Weatherall, but we hired 10 police officers a year to rebuild our police department. We committed to buying properties for parks out into the future, so 5 and 10 acre parcels all over the city of Boise, 1,000 acres that we purchased, looking visionary out into the future. In 1999, we committed and we turned from rebuilding the library downtown and said, let's start buying properties for branch libraries out into the community, and we did that in 1999. So moving forward, simply say, let's look at what we did.
Lauren McLean, you've been on the Boise City Council for the past 8 years and council president for the past 2. You've been part of many decisions, including the defense of the camping ordinance, which we talked about earlier, the library design contract, moving the cabin, increasing the property tax budget by 3% every year, among other decisions. Why should voters select you as a change agent when you've been part of the status quo?
Sure, thanks. I appreciate that. That fundamentally gets to what's the difference between us as candidates. And so much of it is about where we've come as a city and where we need to go next. While I've made tough decisions on a weekly basis on many of those issues, I've also stood at the dais and said we made a mistake in not setting the right parameters around the library with regard to the cabin. I've wrestled with tough issues and recognized that there are times when we have to hear that we've done something that could have been done differently, take that information and move forward differently. And as the next mayor of Boise, we've come so far, but we are at a crossroads and we need a new sense of urgency, new perspective, and fresh energy to tackle the issues that we have now and face as a city because we've come so far and are such a different place.
Great, thank you. Courtney Nielsen, during the campaign, you've said that homelessness is sometimes a choice. Can you explain that position and explain how that would affect your policies as mayor?
I can only speak from experience. I was homeless because I was a meth user for 14 years, and I now have 12 and a half years of sobriety. So when I say due to mental health, drugs and alcohol and abuse, I can speak on behalf of those. So how I would advocate very much for hypnotherapy, counseling, and things of that nature to empower, because I'm such a huge advocate for self-empowerment and self-growth. I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for help. I went to 6.5 years of hypnotherapy and it changed my life. I believe in being the best that we can always be, and from where I was and where I am now, and here I am sitting here running for mayor for the city of Boise, from which I was born and raised, is heroic. So thank you.
Wayne Richey, during the campaign you said that you want to stop growth in the Treasure Valley. As mayor, aside from building a $26 billion wall, what specifically would you do to stop people from moving to Boise?
Taxes first. We need to redo the property taxes. The new people coming in have driven the price of real estate so high, locals cannot afford to live here anymore. And our property taxes have tripled. That's not acceptable. So yeah, let's start there. I've mentioned trash in the place. That would be a last resort, but I'm not beyond that. I literally could care less about new people. It's my friends and family that are raised here that are being priced out. They can't live here anymore. If you don't make $70,000 a year, you cannot afford to buy a 3-bedroom starter home in Boise, Idaho. I'm not okay with that. And, start with taxes, go from there. Billboards would be way down the line. But I'm not beyond that.
Okay. All right, that is all the questions we have for you tonight. Deep breath. We will conclude with 1-minute closing statements. We're going to go from right to left, and we're going to start with Wayne Richey. You have 1 minute for closing statements.
There's a lot of young people here. Let me see a real quick show of hands. How many of you do not own a house? Okay, that's quite a few. And what I just said a second ago, if you don't make $70,000 a year, you cannot buy a starter home in Boise, Idaho. That's $1,700 a month mortgage payment. If you got a student loan, that goes up. You have a car loan, that goes up. That's a lot of money in a town where the average income is only $29,000. The average home household income is $50,000. If people keep coming here, if it's the same number of people move in next year of what came here this year, that number is just going to go up. We're being priced out. So you might hate me for wanting to cut back growth, but I'm doing it for you. I want you to own a home. I want you to live here in the future.
Courtney Nielsen, 1 minute.
From observation and to move forward, I think it's in the people of Boise's best interest to elect a candidate such as myself with no current or past government ties. Someone such as myself to come in with a clean slate, no judgment, plays well with others, and ready to be of service to the people of Boise. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. If you vote for a politician, you're going to get a politician. If you want something different, you have to vote for something different. I'm Courtney Nielsen, and I'm a candidate for mayor, and I'm not a politician. Thank you.
Lauren McLean, 1 minute.
Well, thanks everybody for coming tonight. And as you can tell by the discussion, there are a lot of issues and tough challenges that we as a city face right now. And I'm so optimistic. While we're at a crossroads, I'm optimistic that if we have the courage to do hard things, bring fresh perspective, a new sense of urgency, and a willingness to listen to the public throughout this community, we can come up with the solutions to make sure that our city remains that place where you can buy a house, find a job that'll pay you what you need to live here, and be able to build the life that all of us dream that we can. So I really appreciate the conversations we had. There's such an urgency around where we are now, and humbly ask you for your vote so that together we can tackle these things and build a city for the next generation and the generation after. Thank you very much.
Brent Coles, 1 minute.
One of the things we promised to do back in the 90s was to preserve the foothills. And I appreciate the opportunity we had, and I worked with Lauren McLean to get that accomplished. She was the campaign manager. She went out and managed, put people together to make it happen. But the idea started with the community. It started with the community coming together and said, we've got too much traffic on 8th Street and 13th and 15th. Working together, developing partnerships, seeking what the community's focus is, what their ideas are, what our priorities are. Right now, a priority is affordable housing, being able to stay in your home, not being taxed out of your home. A priority is to reduce property taxes.
Mayor Bieter, 1 minute.
Well, first of all, I commend BYP for a great forum. Some innovative kinds of things like the lightning round. We haven't had that in any other forum. And I'm so pleased with the relationship that we've built over the years. And I've learned so much from you. And I want to continue to do that, because my real concern are the decisions that only affect you, but the most vocal are those that already have their place here. My daughter, who's here this evening, represents the 4th generation of my family that's called Boise home. What motivates me every day is to make sure that we leave a Boise as good as the one I got, and hopefully even better, for her and for all of you and for all of your children. And that's why this is so important. There are tough decisions to be made. Everybody wants to say, well, I was for that, and then I was against it, and then you all know that I'll make those decisions for your long-term best interest and listen to you all throughout the year to help that out.
Rebecca Arnold, 1 minute.
Thank you very much for being here tonight and for providing this opportunity for us to have a forum. There are some great things that have happened in the city of Boise over the last 15 years. There's no question about that. But we have lost our focus. Our focus is in the wrong direction. And I think part of the issue is because we've had some elected officials who've been privileged their entire life, and they don't understand what it's like to not be able to afford a home or an apartment or the basic things that you need. So we have to look at, instead of chasing the next top 10 list or building grandiose buildings, we have to look at responsible spending to make sure it's affordable for everyone to be here. You know, things like taking 20% pay raises, twice during your term? That to me indicates that there is no responsible spending. So we have to get our focus back on taking care of the basics for our citizens.
All right. Well, thank you all again for coming to tonight's forum presented by the Idaho Statesman and Boise Young Professionals of the Boise Metro Chamber of Commerce. And I want to personally thank Bree and Aaron for doing an awesome job.